Hello. I met Claire when we were both in our early 20s, still figuring out who we were and what we wanted out of life. She was the kind of woman who had a presence, effortlessly charming, confident, and full of energy that seemed to draw people toward her. I, on the other hand, was more reserved. I was never the loudest person in the room, but I had ambition and a quiet determination that set me apart. Maybe that's why we fit so well together. She was fire, and I was the steady ground beneath it. We met at a friend's wedding. I still remember the way she caught my eye across the dance floor, how she laughed so easily, how she had this way of making a simple conversation feel like an adventure. I wasn't the type to make the first move, but with Claire, hesitation never even crossed my mind. One moment, I was just another guest in a crowded hall, and the next, I was dancing with the most captivating woman I had ever met. From that night on, everything just felt right. There was no confusion, no second-guessing. Just two people who found something in each other that they didn't even know they were looking for. Within months, we were inseparable. We spent our weekends exploring new restaurants, taking spontaneous road trips, and making promises about the future. Claire worked in marketing, and she was damn good at it. She had a way of reading people, of knowing exactly what to say to win them over. Her job was fast-paced, full of networking events and social gatherings, but she thrived in that world. I had always admired her drive, the way she carried herself with such certainty. Meanwhile, I was building my own career in real estate, working long hours, making deals, and slowly shaping the life I had always dreamed of. Our wedding was small but perfect. We didn't need anything extravagant, just close friends, family, and the feeling that we were starting something that would last forever. I remember standing at the altar, watching her walk toward me, thinking I had never seen anyone more beautiful in my life. The first few years of marriage felt like a dream. We moved into a beautiful home, not too big, not too small, just the right place to build a life together. Our days were filled with work, our evenings with laughter and late-night talks on the couch. Weekends were spent with friends, hosting dinner parties, or just enjoying each other's company. We traveled when we could, trying to see as much of the world as possible before settling down completely. Claire had this way of making everything feel exciting, even the little things. A simple grocery run could turn into a fun outing. A rainy day indoors could become an impromptu movie marathon with homemade popcorn. Life with her never felt dull, and I loved that about her. Looking back, it's easy to say we were happy because we truly were. If someone had asked me then what my life would look like in 10 years, I would have painted a picture of us growing old together, maybe starting a family, maybe just continuing our adventures as a couple. The details didn't matter because, in the end, all that mattered was that it was her and me. And back then, I believed that was enough. The years after our wedding felt like they passed and fast forward. Life had a rhythm, a comforting balance of work, love, and simple joys that made every day feel fulfilling. Claire and I had settled into a routine, but it never felt dull. If anything, it felt like we were creating something meaningful, something that would last a lifetime. We had bought a house in a quiet but lively neighborhood, the kind of place where people took care of their lawns and kids rode their bikes down the street. It wasn't a mansion, but it was ours. A two-story home with big windows that let in plenty of light, a kitchen large enough for Claire to experiment with her cooking, and a backyard where we dreamed about one day putting in a fire pit. We made it our own, filling it with memories and inside jokes that only we understood. Claire had a knack for decorating. She had an eye for color, for little details that turned a house into a home. I let her take the lead on that, and she made our space feel warm and inviting. Every room had something that felt like us, photos from our travels, souvenirs from weekend getaways, framed notes we had written each other over the years. Our bedroom was her favorite part of the house, always filled with scented candles and soft blankets. She would joke that it was her sanctuary, a place where she could unwind after long days at work. Our careers kept us busy, but we made time for each other. Claire was thriving in marketing, moving up the corporate ladder with ease. She had a natural talent for winning people over, and her success was no surprise to me. I had built my own real estate business from the ground up, putting in the long hours to make sure we had the kind of life we wanted. We were both ambitious, and that ambition made us a good team. We understood the sacrifices that came with building something for ourselves, and we supported each other through it. Weekends were sacred. No matter how busy we got, we always carved out time to do something together. Some days, it was as simple as making breakfast and lounging around in pajamas until noon. Other times, we'd drive out of the city just to escape for a while. Claire loved road trips, windows down, music blasting, just the two of us and the open road. Those drives felt like a reminder of why we fell in love in the first place. It was easy to get caught up in the chaos of life, but in those moments, it was just us. We had friends over often, hosting game nights and dinner parties that stretched late into the evening. Claire was the perfect host, making everyone feel welcome, keeping the conversation flowing. She had a way of making people feel special, of drawing them in with her charm. It was one of the things I loved most about her. Holidays were another thing we took seriously. Every year, we went all out, decorating, planning, making sure everything felt festive. Christmas was her favorite, and she had a tradition of putting on an old holiday movie while we decorated the tree. I always let her pick out the ornaments, even if she insisted on buying new ones every year. We weren't perfect, but we were happy. If we argued, it was over small things, whether or not I left the lights on, whose turn it was to take out the trash. Nothing that ever truly mattered. At the end of the day, we always found our way back to each other. Looking back now, it's almost painful to remember how much I believed in the life we were building. If someone had told me then that it would all come crashing down, I wouldn't have believed them. Not for a second. But for now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Life with Claire felt complete. We had built a home, carved out a life together, and created a relationship that others admired. People would often tell me how lucky I was to have a wife like her, and I agreed. She was vibrant, full of life, the kind of person who could make the most ordinary moments feel special. Our days had a familiar rhythm. Mornings started with coffee, Claire always taking hers with a ridiculous amount of creamer. I used to tease her that she liked sugar more than coffee itself, and she'd just roll her eyes with a playful smile. We'd part ways for work, exchanging quick kisses before heading out the door, and then reunite in the evenings to share stories about our day. She always had something interesting to say, stories about clients, office drama, or some new project she was excited about. I loved listening to her talk, watching the way her eyes lit up when she was passionate about something. We had different social circles, but we made time for each other's friends. I'd go with her to corporate networking events where she'd introduce me with pride, and she'd come with me to gatherings where my closest friends from college would reminisce about old times. Claire had this way of fitting in anywhere. She could talk business with executives just as easily as she could joke around with my buddies over a game of pool. I admired that about her. Vacations were something we both loved. Whenever we had time off, we'd plan getaways, whether it was a long weekend in the mountains or a week on a tropical beach. Claire loved the ocean, and I can still picture her standing barefoot in the sand, the wind in her hair, completely at peace. We had a long list of places we wanted to visit: Italy, Japan, Australia. We were always talking about, one day, about how we'd take a month off and just explore. I had no doubt that we would. We weren't just partners, we were best friends. We had our own little traditions: Sunday brunch at the same cafe, late-night drives with no destination, leaving sticky notes for each other with little messages. It wasn't always about grand gestures, it was the small things that made us, us. I never once questioned our relationship. I never doubted her love for me. If anything, I thought we were stronger than most couples. We had been together for years, and while some people seemed to lose that initial spark over time, I thought ours had only deepened. I often found myself thinking about the future, about how we'd grow old together, still laughing over inside jokes and holding hands on our evening walks. I pictured us hosting family gatherings, maybe even becoming the kind of couple that younger people looked up to. Claire and I had always said that no matter what, we'd never let life make us strangers to each other. I truly believe that. And for now, in this moment, everything still felt real. Everything still felt right. For years, I had never once questioned Claire's loyalty. Our life together had been solid, built on trust, routine, and a shared vision of the future. I wasn't the jealous type, and I always believed that a relationship without trust wasn't worth having. But looking back now, I can pinpoint the moment when the first shadow of doubt crept into my mind. It started small, almost unnoticeable. Claire had always been busy with work, but in the last few months, her schedule had become unpredictable. Late nights at the office became more frequent. Business trips that had once been rare suddenly became a regular part of her calendar. She would come home exhausted, claiming she had been in back-to-back meetings, too tired to do anything but shower and fall into bed. At first, I didn't question it. Claire was ambitious, and her career had always been important to her. But something about the way she carried herself was different. She was distracted, her mind always somewhere else. I would ask her about her day, and she'd give vague answers, brushing off the details she once loved sharing with me. Then, there were the little changes in her routine. She started dressing differently, not drastically, but just enough for me to notice. A new perfume, more effort in her appearance when she left for work, even on days when she claimed to have no meetings. It wasn't like Claire to be overly concerned with her looks on a random Tuesday, but I told myself I was overthinking it. One evening, she got a text while we were sitting on the couch. I glanced over instinctively, not because I was suspicious, but because it was natural. She saw me looking and tilted her phone away, quickly locking the screen. A small thing. A meaningless thing. But it lingered in my mind long after she put the phone down. She started spending more time with my brother, Ryan. It made sense in a way. Ryan had always been close to both of us, and Claire had always gotten along well with him. They joked around like siblings, nothing out of the ordinary. But I started noticing subtle things. A shared glance. A quiet conversation that ended the moment I entered the room. The way she laughed a little too hard at his jokes. One night, Ryan and Claire were in the kitchen, laughing about something when I walked in. The second they saw me, the laughter stopped, and the air shifted. Claire smiled at me, too quickly, like she was trying to cover something up. "We were just talking about that ridiculous movie we saw last week," she said casually, but her body language told a different story. That was the moment I realized something was off. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was imagining things. But once the seed of doubt was planted, it started growing, twisting into something I couldn't ignore. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I was reading too much into things, that Claire was still the same woman I had always trusted. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping through my fingers. And I wasn't sure I wanted to know what it was. Once the thought entered my mind, it became impossible to ignore. At first, I had brushed off the small changes in Claire's behavior, convincing myself that I was imagining things. But doubt is a dangerous thing. It doesn't stay quiet once you notice it. It lingers, grows, and forces you to see things you wish you could ignore. Claire had always been open with her phone. She would leave it lying around, never caring if I glanced at a notification or grabbed it to check the time. But lately, that had changed. Her phone was always with her, always face down, and she had started taking it with her even when she left the room. At night, when she used to leave it charging on the nightstand, it was now tucked away in her purse. I told myself it was nothing, that she was just being more careful with her privacy. But I knew Claire. She wasn't the type to suddenly start guarding her phone unless she had a reason to. Her schedule continued to shift in ways that didn't make sense. There were more late nights, more sudden errands, more times when I couldn't quite place where she had been. I would ask about her day, and her answers were just a little too vague, her details slightly inconsistent. One night, she came home late, looking flustered. Her makeup was slightly smudged, her hair a little messy, not in a dramatic way, but enough for me to notice. When I asked how work had been, she hesitated for half a second before answering. "Exhausting," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "So many meetings, I barely had time to breathe." Something about the way she said it felt rehearsed. Forced. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But that nagging voice in the back of my head wouldn't let me. Then, there was Ryan. My brother had always been an easygoing guy, never the type to act secretive or tense. But lately, he had been avoiding me, not in an obvious way, but just enough for me to notice. He used to stop by the house all the time, but now, when I invited him over, he always seemed to have an excuse. It was like there was something unspoken between us, something just beneath the surface that neither of us was acknowledging. One evening, I walked into the room while Claire was on the phone. She didn't hear me at first, and for a moment, I just stood there, watching her. She was smiling, really smiling, in a way that I hadn't seen in a while. It wasn't the casual, distracted kind of smile she usually gave me these days. It was different. Then she saw me. The smile vanished so fast it was like it had never been there. She pulled the phone away from her ear, laughing awkwardly. "Oh, hey," she said, a little too breezily. "I was just talking to a coworker." Something inside me twisted. I didn't say anything, just nodded. I didn't ask who she was talking to. I didn't ask why she suddenly looked nervous. I didn't ask why my own wife, the woman I had trusted for years, was starting to feel like a stranger to me. But I was starting to realize that I needed to find out. The feeling wouldn't go away. It was there when I woke up in the morning, lingering in the back of my mind while I went through my routine. It was there at work, gnawing at me while I pretended to focus on emails and meetings. It was there at night, keeping me awake long after Claire had fallen asleep beside me. I was losing my grip on what was real and what wasn't. I kept telling myself that I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. But then Claire would do something, a glance at her phone with a little smirk, a last-minute change of plans, an odd hesitance in her voice, and suddenly, the doubt came rushing back, stronger than ever. She had started making more excuses to go out. Work dinners, drinks with friends, running errands. I never used to question her before, but now, every time she left, I felt my stomach tighten. One night, as she got ready to go out, I leaned against the doorway and watched her. She was taking her time, carefully applying her makeup, adjusting her dress in front of the mirror. It wasn't unusual. Claire had always liked to look her best, but something about it felt off. She caught me watching her and smiled. "What?" she asked playfully. "Nothing," I said. "You just look nice." She laughed, a little too lightheartedly. I always do. A harmless joke. But for some reason, it left a bitter taste in my mouth. I wanted to ask where she was really going. I wanted to ask why she had started wearing perfume just to run errands, or why she had suddenly become so protective of her phone. But I said nothing. I just watched as she grabbed her purse, kissed me on the cheek, and walked out the door. I stared at the clock for hours that night, waiting for her to come home. When she finally did, she was in a good mood, humming to herself as she set her things down. She smelled like wine and perfume, her hair slightly messy as if someone had been running their fingers through it. "How was it?" I asked, my voice even. She smiled, kicking off her heels. "Oh, just the usual work talk." "Boring, really?" I nodded, pretending to believe her. Then there was Ryan. He had become distant, avoiding eye contact, making up reasons why he couldn't meet up. When we did talk, he seemed on edge, fidgety in a way he never used to be. One afternoon, I stopped by my parents' house, hoping to catch up with him. My dad was home, sitting in the living room watching the news. I asked if Ryan had been around lately. "Yeah," he said without looking away from the screen. "He was here last night, actually. Claire stopped by too, but they didn't stay long." Something inside me went cold. I forced myself to keep my expression neutral. "Oh, what were they doing?" My dad shrugged. "Didn't say much. Just chatted for a bit, then left together." I nodded slowly, my hands tightening into fists. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. I wanted to believe that I was just seeing things that weren't there. But every new piece of information made it harder and harder to ignore the truth that was forming in my mind. Something was happening. I didn't have proof. I didn't have answers. But I knew that my life was about to change. It happened at my parents' house. A place that had always felt safe, untouched by lies or betrayal. Until now. My father had come home earlier than usual that evening, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. But as he stepped inside, something immediately felt off. The house wasn't empty. There were voices, familiar voices. He followed the sound down the hall, his footsteps slowing as he reached the guest room. The door was slightly open, and that's when he saw them. Claire, my wife, Ryan, my brother, together, in his house. For a second, he didn't move, didn't breathe. Claire was half-dressed, tangled in the sheets, her hair messy in a way that left no room for doubt. Ryan was beside her, his shirt off, his expression far too comfortable for what should have been a mistake. Then Claire turned and saw him. She gasped, scrambling to cover herself. Ryan froze, his face draining of color. My father didn't say a word. He just stood there, staring at them, the weight of what he was seeing pressing down on him like a heavy stone. Claire opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Ryan wouldn't even look at him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my father turned and walked away. He didn't yell. He didn't demand answers. Because he already knew there were no excuses that could ever make this right. I had no idea my world had already fallen apart. The night seemed like any other. I was at home, staring at my phone, waiting for a message from Claire that would tell me she was working late or grabbing drinks with friends. I didn't even expect an excuse anymore. I just waited for the lie, let it wash over me, and pretended not to care. Then my phone rang. It was my father. Something about the way his name appeared on my screen sent a strange, unsettled feeling through my chest. My father wasn't the type to call out of the blue. If he needed something, he'd send a short text. A call, especially this late, meant something was wrong. I answered immediately. "Hey, Dad. Everything okay?" There was silence on the other end. A long, heavy pause. Then, finally, his voice came through. Low, steady, but different. "Cold. Son," he said, "I need to tell you something." I sat up, gripping the phone a little tighter. "What is it?" Another pause. Then, like a blade slicing through the air, the words that would change everything. I caught Claire and Ryan together. The world around me seemed to stop. "What?" My own voice didn't sound like mine. I saw them, he said, his tone unreadable. At my house. They were in the guest room. He exhaled sharply, as if saying the words out loud made them heavier. I walked in on them. I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. No. 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 Not Claire. Not Ryan. Not my wife. Not my brother. There had to be a mistake. My father had misunderstood. He had walked in on something innocent, something that only looked bad. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I wanted to tell you right away, my father continued, his voice harder now. But I needed to be sure. I saw it with my own eyes, son. There's no mistake. The words sank into me, heavy, suffocating, undeniable. Claire. Ryan. Together. In my father's house. My mind raced, flashing through every strange moment, every unexplained absence, every excuse that hadn't quite made sense. It had all been leading to this. The shaking started in my hands first, then spread through my entire body. I clenched my jaw so tightly it hurt. Son, my father asked cautiously. I didn't respond right away. I was staring at the floor, barely breathing, gripping my phone so tightly I thought it might snap in half. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something dangerous, something dark. Finally, when I spoke, my voice was calm. Too calm. Thank you for telling me. A pause. Then my father said, What are you going to do? I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and let the rage settle inside me like a slow-burning fire. I'm going to make them pay. Rage is a funny thing. It doesn't always come as an explosion. Sometimes it's quiet, cold. It settles inside you like a storm on the horizon, patient, waiting. That's what I felt as I sat there, the weight of my father's words pressing down on me. Claire. Ryan. Together. The people I trusted most had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And now, they were going to face the consequences. I didn't call Claire. I didn't call Ryan. They didn't deserve a warning. Instead, I went to work. The first thing I did was go through every gift, every luxury, every damn thing I had ever given Claire, and I took it back. Jewelry, designer bags, expensive clothes, all the little things she had collected over the years gone. I packed them into boxes without hesitation, not giving myself time to dwell on the memories attached to them. Then I went after the bigger things. Claire had been driving the car I had bought her 2 years ago. That ended today. I called the leasing company, reported the vehicle as no longer authorized, and had it locked from remote access. She could find her own way around from now on. Our joint bank account. Closed. Credit cards? Canceled. Every dime she had access to because of me, gone. I wasn't leaving her with a single thing that had my name on it. By the time she walked through the door that evening, I was sitting on the couch, waiting. The moment she saw me, she froze. She must have seen something in my face, something she hadn't seen before. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, carefully, she set her purse down. Hey, she said lightly, like nothing was wrong. How was your day? I didn't move. Didn't blink. I know. That was all I said. Her face changed instantly. The color drained from her cheeks, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. I don't know what you're talking about. I laughed. Actually laughed. A short, bitter sound that made her flinch. Don't insult me, Claire. My voice was calm. Too calm. I know everything. My father saw you. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like a trapped animal, like someone trying to find the right lie to get out of the noose tightening around her neck. I can explain, she started, stepping closer. I stood up, and she stopped immediately. No, I said simply. You can't. Her breathing was shaky now. Please, let's just talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. I gestured to the suitcase sitting by the door, already packed with the essentials I knew she'd need. Get out. Her eyes widened. What? You heard me. My voice was sharper now, cutting through the room like a blade. I want you gone. I don't give a damn where you go, but you're not staying here. Not in my house. Not in my life. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel a thing. No sympathy. No sadness. Nothing. You can't just throw me out like this, she whispered, her voice breaking. I smiled, a cruel, cold smile. Watch me. She looked at the suitcase, at the packed boxes, at the car keys that were no longer hers. Reality was setting in now. Everything she had taken for granted, the comfort, the security, the life I had built for her, was gone. She tried again, one last desperate attempt. I made a mistake. No, I cut her off. You made a choice, and now you get to live with it. For a moment, she just stood there, stunned. Then, slowly, she reached for the suitcase. She didn't argue, didn't fight. She knew it was over. As she walked to the door, she turned back, her eyes pleading. I never wanted to hurt you. I stared at her, my expression unreadable. You didn't just hurt me, Claire. My voice was quiet now. You destroyed everything. She hesitated, like she wanted to say more, but I had already turned away. She wasn't worth another second of my time. The door shut behind her, and just like that she was gone. But there was still one last thing left to do. Ryan. I picked up my phone and called him. He answered on the second ring, his voice hesitant. Hey, bro. Don't, I said, my voice colder than I had ever heard it. Silence. Then I spoke the last words I would ever say to him. You are dead to me. I hung up, and for the first time in weeks, I felt free. The silence after Claire left should have felt empty, but it didn't. It felt like freedom. For the first time in weeks, maybe even months, my home didn't feel suffocating. The air was lighter. The weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying was suddenly gone. Claire was out of my life. Ryan was dead to me. And for the first time since the doubts began creeping in, I didn't feel lost. I felt clear. But they weren't done with me. The first message came from Claire the next morning. I woke up to the screen of my phone glowing in the early morning darkness, her name the first thing I saw. There was a time when seeing her name on my screen brought a smile to my face, when even a simple good morning from her was enough to start my day right. Now, it filled me with nothing but disgust. Claire, please, just talk to me. I know I hurt you, but we need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time before setting the phone down, face up on the nightstand. I let the notification sit there, unanswered. Let her wonder if I had even seen it. It wasn't my job to ease her guilt. Not after everything she had done. Then came the calls. At first, just one or two, spaced hours apart. Then, by midday, she was calling over and over, each one going to voicemail. I let them ring, let them pile up, until my phone became nothing but a buzzing reminder of her desperation. Later, when I finally looked at my messages, I saw the flood of texts she had sent. Claire, I made a mistake. I was stupid. Please, I'll do anything to fix this. Claire, I don't want to lose you. Can we just meet? Just once? Claire, why won't you answer me? And finally, one that made me laugh, an empty, humorless sound. Claire, you can't just cut me off like this. But that's exactly what I was doing. She had already lost me long before my father called me that night. Long before I packed her bags and stripped her of everything I had given her. She had made her choices. Now, I was making mine. I blocked her number, deleted the messages, and felt nothing. But Claire wasn't the only one trying to crawl back into my life. The next day, Ryan reached out. Unlike Claire, he didn't start with apologies. He didn't even try to justify what he had done. Instead, his first message was as weak as he was. Ryan, man, I fucked up. That was it. Just 5 words. 5 empty, pathetic words that meant nothing to me. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He just wanted absolution without consequences. I didn't reply. A day later, another message came. Ryan, I know you hate me. I don't blame you. But can we at least talk? There was nothing left to say. He had taken the one person in the world he should have protected, his own brother, and betrayed him in the worst way possible. It wasn't just about Claire. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the fact that he had made a choice to betray me and kept making it, over and over again. That kind of thing doesn't just disappear with a few pathetic messages. I ignored him, just like I had ignored Claire. But unlike her, he wasn't ready to let it go. A few days later, he showed up at my house. I heard the knocking before I saw him through the peephole, standing on my doorstep, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot. He looked different. Smaller. Like a man who finally realized what he had lost. I didn't answer the door. I just stood there, watching him, letting him knock. Come on, man, he called through the door. Just talk to me. I screwed up. Okay? I know I did. I remained still, my hands resting on the doorframe. More knocking, louder this time. I miss my brother, he said, his voice cracking. I miss you. The words meant nothing. He hadn't missed me when he was sneaking around behind my back. He hadn't missed me when he was in bed with my wife, laughing at my ignorance. Now he missed me? No, that wasn't how this worked. I swear, it just happened, he continued, his voice desperate now. I never meant for it to go that far. And that's when I actually laughed. A bitter, sharp sound that I didn't try to hold back. Never meant for it to go that far. He had every chance to stop. Every opportunity to choose differently. But he hadn't. He had kept going. And now, when he had lost everything, he wanted to pretend it was some accident? The knocking stopped. There was silence for a few long seconds. Then I heard him sigh. "All right," he muttered. "I get it. You're done with me." Damn right, I was. I waited until his footsteps faded before finally stepping away from the door. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel anything. I had wasted enough of my life on them. Now, I was done. The days that followed were quiet. Peaceful, even. I expected to feel some kind of grief, some overwhelming sadness that would hit me now that the chaos had settled. But it never came. What I felt instead was relief, the kind of relief that seeps into your bones when a long nightmare finally ends. Claire and Ryan were gone. Their numbers were blocked, their messages deleted, their presence in my life erased. And with each day that passed, I thought about them less and less. I had spent so much time drowning in their betrayal, obsessing over what they had done, trying to understand why they had done it. But now, I didn't care. The why didn't matter. The past didn't matter. Only the future did. I threw myself into my work. It was easy to keep busy, to fill my days with something productive instead of sitting in the wreckage of what had been. My business had suffered while I was spiraling through suspicion and anger, but now that my mind was clear, I focused on rebuilding what I had let slip. And it felt good, really good, to put my energy into something that actually mattered. I started going to the gym more often, too. At first, it was just an excuse to get out of the house, but soon, it became something more. Every weight I lifted, every mile I ran, felt like a way to burn off the last remnants of the past. It was a reminder that I was still here. I was still strong. They hadn't broken me. The house was mine again. Without Claire, it no longer felt suffocating. I rearranged furniture, redecorated, got rid of things that reminded me of her. The bedroom that once felt like a shrine to our failed marriage was now just a room, a place where I could finally sleep without feeling like a fool. I even painted the walls a new color. It was a small thing, but it made a difference. My father checked in on me often, but he didn't hover. He had been my rock through all of this, and I think he knew that now I needed to stand on my own. When we talked about normal things, work, the news, his plans for retirement. He never brought up Claire or Ryan unless I did. And I didn't, because they were irrelevant now. As for my mother, she was more conflicted. She hated what Ryan had done, but she was still his mother. I didn't hold it against her. She never excused him, never tried to convince me to make amends, but I knew she wished things were different. Too bad. Some betrayals don't get second chances. Ryan never tried reaching out again. Maybe he finally understood that we were done, that there was no coming back from what he did. Claire, though? Claire held on longer. She tried reaching me through emails, through mutual friends, even through a handwritten letter she left in my mailbox. I never read it. I didn't need to. Whatever she had to say, whatever excuse or apology she wanted to give, it didn't matter. There was nothing left between us. One day, I woke up and realized something. I didn't think about her anymore. I didn't wake up with the weight of betrayal sitting on my chest. I didn't go to bed replaying every lie she told, every moment that should have tipped me off. The pain had faded into nothing, and in its place was freedom. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed, no longer the husband who had been blind to what was happening behind his back. I was just me again, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough. I had survived. I had moved on, and I had won. Bye-bye.